Hello and blessings, beautiful souls. So I have a few things that I really wanted to talk about today, and these are things that have had quite a lot of impact in my life of late. In fact, they have completely reshaped my practice as a witch. Okay, so I don't even know how to begin this story, to be perfectly honest, but I just know that I really want to tell it and I really want to share this with you, and I hope that you understand. So, when I lived up north, I was working with a framework, and it was a framework of, within my craft that I cultivated over time. Now, many of you already know that I am a hereditary pagan witch, and I come from Brazil, and I grew up in a spiritism type of environment where my family over there practiced and still practice and run a terreiro of Umbanda Macumba. And when I moved to Australia at a young age, I felt a bit isolated, and I felt a bit on my own, and I was looking for a bit of an anchor. I was looking for something familiar, and there was hardly anything at that time that was familiar, that reminded me of home, that would help me to connect with my, ancestral practice or my family practice. And that was a really sad time. And I think that now, looking back on that time, it was sadder even than I gave myself credit for at that time. But I found myself in a pretty constructive mind frame, and I've always been very proud of the fact that I've been able to do that, is just have a constructive mind frame. When things don't go my way, when things, are a challenge, I don't despair, I just get into a constructive mind frame. And so that's what I did. I went out, and this was the 90s, folks. This was like the mid-90s, and I kind of sunk my teeth into anything that was similar or that felt at all similar. And what I ended up finding was neo-paganism, specifically Wiccan influenced witches' practices. And I found there to be so many similarities within these sort of neo-pagan practices, and I sort of like leapt on it. It was like I was like perishing of thirst in the desert, and I just needed something, needed some water. And what I found in that new age neo-pagan framework, I found fragments of familiarity, fragments of things that felt like home to me. And what I did was I adopted that framework at that time. I was 16 when that happened. And then over the years, I have felt this sense of, comfortability. No other word for it, really. It's just comfortability. And it wasn't until I moved from Cairns recently down here to the southern Tasmania's Huon Valley area that something inside of me really shifted, and I felt a real sense of disquiet, and like that comfortability that I was so accustomed to was now like a thorn in my side, and it was a huge hindrance. Oh, I'm cold, folks. It's a cold day. So I didn't quite know what to do with it, and when I first arrived, I had back-to-back illnesses, just adjusting to, the cold climate. I came down here just before the winter solstice, and it's a cold place. Tassie is actually a cold place. And I was sick, and I was coughing, and at the same time I was having these intense dreams, like these lucid dreams where I was being awoken, like I'd be on the cusp of my sleep, and this happened during a full moon lunar eclipse thing in I think it was June, July of this year. All these experiences are blurring, and I was so sick, and I really wanted to stay awake for the eclipse, but I couldn't. I had pneumonia, and I had to have medicine, and I felt really just crappy. I just felt really crappy. And so I decided to go to bed, and what ended up happening is I had this succession of lucid dreams, and they were so vivid. They were absolutely incredibly so vivid. I found myself talking to them with, my best friend, and most recently I've talked to them with Gordon, who's turning out to be like a really good buddy to me down here. Just talking about this experience, trying to make sense of it, because it was fragments of something significant for me that I didn't quite know what to do with. And sometimes when I'm stuck and I can't decipher something for myself, I talk about it with people that I respect and that, respect me. And then sometimes that can help. That can help to sort of elaborate, if you will. And while all of this is happening, I'm here in this new place, this place that feels oddly masculine to me, having come from a place that felt acutely female or feminine. I feel this place that is, is wild man, masculine, and I find myself stepping into a different type of energetic feel and zone. Like I'm getting really comfortable with like outdoor sort of like hard labor kind of stuff. We're farming. I'm enjoying using an axe to chop wood. I'm just doing all these things that I've never done before that feel really sort of like powerful, like physically powerful to me, and that I have probably inadvertently or subconsciously always associated to man's work. I don't know why, but anyway. And I'm doing all of this, and something inside of me is upset. Is just, and then that upset became like just unsettled. And I started to sort of think about this feeling of unsettled and mix it with these lucid dreams that I was having, these dreams where I'm being like called forth, where a person is actually standing before me with her hand extended and calling me, like, come with me. It was like this very, just really intense sort of stuff. And then like it all sort of converged for me, and I finally saw what was going on. I finally figured out what was going on. I was quietly pissed off. I was dissatisfied. I was feeling judgmental of other people's practices. I was feeling judgmental of my own practices. I was overly opinionated. I had all this shit to say, all this stuff to say, and I didn't understand where it was coming from. And as I'm shifting energetically, as these lucid dreams are coming, and I'm out there and I'm using my body and I'm just getting myself into a different frame of mind and immersing myself into a different place and really, really listening to the spirits of that place, it became very obvious to me that I had been neglecting my ancestral practice, and it was having a detrimental effect on me. And when I really sat with that, I felt so sad. I felt so sad, like I had disrespected my family, like I had let my, grandmother down, which is something that I've never done before. I've never thought that I could, but now that I look at it, I feel like that's what happened. Like it sort of hit me. It hit me really hard, actually. And then, as I was having this like intense realization where I felt like I had completely abandoned my ancestral practice, and I just didn't know what to do. I just honestly felt a bit like, what do I do now? My ancestral practice has always been anchored into my life in Brazil, my terreiro, my household, the entire culture over there. And I haven't experienced that culture since I've been here. I traveled back to Brazil couple of years ago. I did a few YouTube videos about it, and I felt, you know, really good. When I travelled back, it was complex and it was very immersive and very emotional. It was really just an interesting time. And I came back, and when I came back, I swore to myself that I was going to, you know, bring some of that culture back with me, you know, cook some more Brazilian food and listen to more Brazilian music and, you know, watch some Brazilian TV and do that sort of stuff. Well, of course, I didn't do that. You know, life just carries on in its own way. And I tried. I made a Brazilian barbecue for my family. I made farofa. I tried to make feijão. They hated it. I'm like, oh, well, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? But most recently, I was hanging out with Gordon. We were having a fun sort of like weekend meet and greet thing in Hobart. And Gordon is about the closest to Brazil that I've come through anyone that is not directly Brazilian, which is a weird way of saying this. So I have a Brazilian sister that lives here. I have a sister, of course. She's Brazilian and she lives here. And I have met some other Brazilians, but Gordon actually, he's used to Brazil. He's used to Brazilians, and he keeps asking me things about Brazil. And anyway, through conversations with him, I found myself just feeling really like, I don't know how to put it. I really don't know how to describe this, but he reminded me that it's not hard, basically. He reminded me, he was a good friend. He reminded me that it's not hard to go back there to, you know, to your land, and you can get there through various practical means. He's like, I've got a pressure cooker. Do you want to come over to my kitchen and we can make some Brazilian food? And I thought to myself, I have a pressure cooker. I inherited a pressure cooker from my uncle when he passed. And there's a pressure cooker here. And that's what you need to do to make feijão, one of the staple foods of my culture. And he's like, just make some food and talk to your family. And it was just really nourishing and really good advice. And I did what my best friend Erin calls opening the door. I opened the Brazilian door. And so I opened the Brazilian door and I started to honestly speak to my family about things that I haven't spoken about in a long time. And, you know, it's been a couple of years since I went to Brazil, so that's a long time. And then I was gone for a decade before that, where there was very little interaction. And, you know, there's a lot that I haven't been able to say, and there's a lot that they haven't been able to tell me. And in these last couple of months, I found myself really reaching for my family and really reaching for my roots and immersing myself in my cultural practice and my ancestral practice. And it has had like the most profound impact on me. I noticed some of the most bizarre things, and this is sort of, it's given me this opportunity to look at myself and my practice through new eyes, or just a different perspective maybe. And I noticed that everything is different. Everything is different. And my ancestral practice, the practice of magic that I adopted when I was a child, that my family that still live over there practice right now, it's not neo-pagan. It's not touched by neo-paganism. It's folklore, it's folk practices, it's low magic, it's spiritism. It's totally different. And yet what I'm practicing right now, that I was practicing up until a point that I felt really sort of like about, was this like neo-pagan framework. And so what connecting with my ancestral practice has enabled me to do was to sort of like peel back the screen. You know when you get a new phone or a new electronic device, a new tablet of some description, and it comes with that film, and you get that delicious moment of peeling back that screen to reveal like the real screen and all clean and clear without a single smudge on it. That's what it felt like. I consciously went, I'm dissatisfied with the neo-pagan film that I've put over the top of my ancestral practice. And I'm not at all feeling derogatory towards it, because it was, like I said, a saving grace to me at a time where I was perishing in the proverbial desert. But I did that such a long time ago. I was 16 when I did that. I'm 39 now. And I've been there in this place, and I've had this incredible experience within that framework, but I'm no longer suited to that framework. It no longer appeals to me. It's not calling to me. And so I've peeled it off. I peeled the neo-pagan off. And I've been focusing on my ancestral practice and my roots. And I've been immersing myself in traditional Brazilian low magic, and been very interested in low magic from a cross-cultural perspective. I've always had a thing for low magic. I'm honouring now more so than ever the fact that I am a spirit medium. I've spoken about this before. I'm médio rodante, and I have a mão de jogo. I'm a seer and I'm a medium. And I'm placing greater emphasis on those things because they do come from my ancestral line. I'm looking at some of the things that I have done and practiced over the years, like the casting of circle and the following of the wheel. And the following of the wheel to me is very neo-pagan, but it's not necessarily just neo-pagan. The wheel is constructed of solstices and equinoxes that very much are part of my roots and a part of living here where I am right now. And when I came here, they were having celebrations for the winter solstice, and I hear that they have some really fun things for the summer solstice as well. So I'm feeling really comfortable with the solstices and the equinoxes. And there are cross-quarter Sabbath rituals that are of more neo-pagan influence that are still rooted in some aspects of my ancestral lineage, but they're called something different. They might be oddly placed. And so I'm looking at an integration there, which is complex, and I still haven't figured that out in my head yet. But that's something that I really want to look at. I'm looking at creating altar spaces and sacred spaces in much the same way that I did, because that is very ancestral to me. But I'm bringing in the flavors of my Orisha. When I was preparing to leave Cairns, I got rid of statuary that I had bought with me. I'd bought these statuary items with me, these effigies, if you will, with me in my bag, in my handbag. They were a statue of Santa Bárbara, Yansan, and one was São Jorge Ogum, and two of my primary Orisha. And I looked at them, and they were really hard to let go of, but I let go of them even though they had this incredible sentimental attachment. They were something that my family gave. They weren't family heirlooms. They were something that were bought just before I left Brazil. But I just did not want to keep them, and I cannot tell you why. And I remember when I let them go, that I did so because they did not feel authentic to me. I've had experiences with Orisha, and I have an idea and a visual of who Ogum is, what he looks like, his energy. Same with Yansan. And my beautiful, beautiful friend did the most amazing thing for me. This is Anna Turian. She sent me 2 statues over the course of a couple of years. One was Yansan, and when I got that statue, I'm just like, oh my God, yes, this is what my Yansan looks like. This is what she looks like. And then when I came back from Brazil feeling all discombobulated because my Yansan had gone, was no longer primary, and my Emanjá was, I came back feeling all discombobulated and like ripped apart really quite intensely on the inside, and just confused, and it was a weird moment for me. And she sent me this statue of Emanjá, And I went, oh my God, thank God, thank God. You know, it was just like, she was like that person for me who did more than she probably even realizes. These were anchor objects. They made me feel so connected to home, because they were my idea of that Orisha. I had this perception of them, and I really wanted to honor that perception. And these Catholic kind of statues that I had held on to, I was almost repelled by them. I wanted to love them hard. I wanted them to be very meaningful to me. But I had to let them go because they weren't what I had associated. They weren't the images or the energies that I had associated with my Orisha. And doing that was kind of like this intense statement that I didn't know at that time. But I honored it nonetheless, and I started to really listen to myself. And then before I left Cairns, I did a road opener. It was a heavy work, folks. I had 2 of my coven sisters there. It was really heavy work, and I called my family to help me with this job that I needed to do because some serious things were going on, and I felt like I needed to do this road opener. And so I did this road opener, and I worked with Ogun for this road opener, and I came down, I travelled down via car from the north of the country to the far southern point of that country, not even the mainland southern point, like offshore southern point. I went far, folks. I went like far, and I drove the whole way, and I never had an issue in my car. I never had an issue with the road. I never got lost. I never had a single terrible situation on the road. Just, it was the most perfect drive. Took us weeks to get down. And I thought to myself, wow, like my Ogun was with me. I could feel him with me the whole way. And every time I'd go across a border, I would speak to my Ogun, holding space for me. And it's powerful magic. It is just powerful. It's powerful belief. It's powerful magic. It's powerful in every sense of the word. And that's something that accompanied me down here. And the land that I'm on is my land. It's my family's land, and it's land that I will probably pass on to my children. And so it's new ancestral land, and moving down here with this concept of this is where I'm going to root myself. This is going to be my place. This is my place now. Like, not a transient place like all the others that I had found myself in since I moved to Australia. This was my home. This is home to me now. And this is where I'll have my roots. And I may travel far and wide in the world, but I will always come back to this place, and this is where I've got my roots. And so I think this is why my ancestral practice has resurrected itself in my life inadvertently, and why I felt this way, and why I've made these changes, and why I've received these revelations and had these lucid dreams and just felt the way that I have felt, is because I'm here now and I can make this place my home, and it's my responsibility to call my ancestors to this place. And so right now where I stand, I'm really focusing on my ancestral roots and spirits of place, and learning to merge and integrate what is here naturally and what I can then introduce to this place. I'm doing blood magic. I'm doing so much. I'm doing so much. And I'm actively working the land at the same time. Like, really working the land, like I said, like just aggressively, not aggressively, that's not the right word, just intensely working it. And I'm feeling more like myself than I ever had before. And the whole thing is just really like, it's just wonderfully immersive, and I feel like a butterfly emerging from the crystals at the time of spring too, mind you. Not that you can tell that it's spring. It's raining and it keeps snowing on the mountain. But I've just noticed so many glaringly obvious things, and before I knew that I was dissatisfied, and I think inwardly I understood where the restlessness was coming from, but I didn't really want to hear it. I can be very fixed, very dedicated to one thing, and quite stubborn as well, and so I've just been called home in a really special way. It wasn't aggressive, it was natural, and I found myself integrating more with ancestral practices and speaking to my big sister and my little sister, and because I get the best of both worlds with those two, really. My little sister, who lives over there, she's fully fledged initiated in Candomblé, Raspada and Scarified, and I've spoken about this before. My sister Ingrid is fully fledged in Umbanda, and so I have Umbanda and Candomblé, and I have my two sisters that have these two really great that are these two really great wells of resources for me, and they never let me down. Whenever I call them up with a question, they never let me down, and I think that they've started to understand something really important, and that is that I'm away from home, and just like I miss them, I also miss my culture, and I miss the spirit of my culture. I miss that ancestral aspect. Most of my family are buried over there, and they've lived over there, and they've existed over there, and their magic and their impact exists over there, and I'm so far removed from that, but I don't need to be, because when it comes to spirituality, when it comes to magic, when it comes to witchcraft, we have our ancestral connections, and they can connect us to places that we have once been, or our ancestors have once lived, and we can draw a tremendous amount of wisdom and strength from those places. And I noticed that I'd been trying to do that with my Celtic background, my Australian side of the family. They are Scottish by descent, and it just wasn't working for me the same way, and I just made that decision to just go back to what I knew worked. Sometimes you just go back to what you knew. Who knows? Who knows what I mean? But it's been very emotional, and it's been very, it's been very perplexing and confusing, confronting, and also really illuminating and clarifying and cleansing and cathartic and all the good things, all the good feels. And two questions were put to me during this time that seemed really like not associated. One was, why is my voice different when I speak Portuguese? My voice when I speak Portuguese is lower. It's bassier. I don't know how that happens. And when I speak English, it's very high pitched. And so I've been asked why the tone of voice is different, and I've never quite been able to describe as the whys and the hows of that. But I think I pull from my roots when I speak in Portuguese. It's my first language. I was born knowing Portuguese before I knew English. And so it was my first language. It's my language of origin, some might even be able to say, or some might say. And then Gordon most recently asked me if I dream in Portuguese. If I dream in Portuguese, if I dream, with that Portuguese Brazilian filter over it. And I thought about this long and hard, and I realized that when I do spend a lot of time in my culture, or immersed in my culture, talking Portuguese to my sister, for instance, or listening to Brazilian music, or, doing something that really connects me to home, then I actually do dream in Portuguese. as opposed to English, whereas all other times I dream in English because that's what my major influence is. And through that knowledge, and through those seemingly innocent questions, I was able to figure out ways to bring myself back, to bring my culture back into my life, to honor my culture even though I live abroad, and all of those things. I mean, cooking and listening to music, Portuguese music, and listening to Brazilian YouTube videos as well as English YouTube videos. These bring home to me. These bring snippets of home to me, and these comfort me, you know, in a way that I didn't even know I needed to be comforted. And I'm no longer as stressed or even overly emotional as I used to be. I'm no longer as dissatisfied or frustrated or whatever else I felt at that time, that I just couldn't quite put my finger on what it was or why I was feeling it. Like, it just all sort of started to dissipate. This is not to say that I'm a master of my emotions, because I'm still a human being, mind you, but I feel much more peaceful and I feel much more grounded. And it makes me feel happy. It makes me, you know, makes me feel like light and happy, and it makes me feel more like me than I ever have before, and it makes me feel like I'm connected to my family, even though we're worlds apart, really. Not just geographical worlds, but just worlds apart, culture and what have you. And I now understand why my family overseas didn't quite understand my practice anymore. Like, why do you do that? Like, why do you do that? And I used to get I felt a bit picked on, if I'm being entirely truthful. I felt a bit picked on, and I realized that it wasn't that they were picking on me, is that they wanted to know why. And if I had have stopped and accepted what was an honest exchange back then, I would have probably questioned my own motives a bit more, rather than feeling as though I was being critiqued or challenged. When I look back now, I see that I had maybe like overreacted. I think that's the way to put it. I had overreacted. But the fact of the matter is, I'm Brazilian born. I'm a Brazilian. I'm a Brazilian living in Australia. And it's up to me to, you know, to bring my culture here for myself, just to infuse it into my life and into my family's. So I've started teaching my kids Portuguese. I should have done this from when they were little. They do know a few words in Portuguese, they do. But I've also started to call into sacred space my spirits of place back then, my ancestral spirits. And I'm merging that with spirits of place, and I'm working the land simultaneously, and somehow I'm energetically integrating what I need to in this place right now. I'm feeling more connected to home as I farm, as I grow things. That's how we used to do it. In Brazil, we used to grow a lot of our food. We used to grow a lot of our herbs for magic, and that's something that I'm looking to do now. I just want to bring it back. I want to bring it back, and I want to merge it with my Australian culture, and I want to feel that sense of homeliness and presence, the power of that ancestral connection, and, you know, my family as a whole and my culture. I want to be able to feel it even while I'm over here. And I feel that when I do place great focus on that, or when it is a focus of mine to achieve that, to bring that balance into my life, personally for me, so that it feels good for me personally, because I'm the displaced one here. I'm the one that lives in Australia with the majority of my family lives in Brazil. My husband is Australian born. My children all are born here. And so it's me. So that the responsibility for that recalibration and that health of spirit is mine. It's my responsibility. And learning to ground all of that, to create that delicious synergy and to ground it all into place, so that it can be solid and it can be ever present, is a process, not one that I'm, achieving at this moment in time, mind you, because I'm still looking at ways in which I can do that. How can I bring my culture in here? What kind of foods can I cook? What kind of music can I play? What's going to be nice? What can everybody love and listen to and enjoy? Because that's kind of the key, is figuring out, well, I can cook Brazilian food here, but since my family here, my current family, doesn't love all this Brazilian food, I need to find the ones that they do like so that I can include them in my repertoire. And so it's a huge process, but it makes me feel so happy and peaceful and powerful and respectful. It makes me feel respectful. And another thing that I have noticed as well is that when I was operating under that, or practicing under that neo-pagan framework, I was very much looking outside of myself, out at what other people were doing. But now that I'm in this comfy place of home, of ancestral practices, of calling my ancestry home, of trying to synergize and recalibrate my culture so that it fits into where I am now. Now that I'm doing that, I don't actually give a fuck about what is going on around me. I don't care what that person's doing. I don't care what that person's doing. I'm doing me right now. I'm doing, what's good for me and my family and, and my personal practice. And I don't have the time to look out now. I'm not out there. I'm not out there anymore. I'm really present with the self, and I'm really present here, and I'm creating, and I'm building, and I'm sharing, and I'm just doing all the good things. And I'm really happy. And it's like a whole huge big weight has lifted. Like I've done some good shadow work. Like I got it. I got down to the crux of what the fuck was going on, and I fixed it. I'm fixing it. I didn't fix it. I'm in the process of like fixing it and integrating this and harmonizing that and recalibrating, and it's having a really, really good effect on me. And as a result, that effect is extending out to my family. They can see me transforming in a way, and I'm very open about what's going on with my husband and with my children, and we're talking a lot more, and we're on a very similar page now, and we're all sort of working as a good unit, and it's really really special. Once I started looking at my family of origin, for instance, and my ancestral practice, and comparing it, which is not fair to do, comparing it to what I was practicing, a more neo-pagan practice, to an old Brazilian folkloric spiritist practice, I saw that I understood why I merged them. I did. I understood why I did what I did, but I no longer felt like I needed to do that. I think that a lot of what I did, a lot of the reason why I clung to that neo-pagan framework is that it was socially acceptable, which is a weird way of putting it, but what we do in Brazil, what is done in Brazil and in other third world countries, I'm not specifically saying this only happens in Brazil, it's a little bit more ew. Just to put it like that. It's a little bit darker, and it's a little bit more primal, and it's a little bit more like real, like raw and juicy. It's not better, it's just real. I mean, I'm talking about a place that still sacrifices animals. I'm talking a place that openly does bone work, cemetery work, blood magic, and that engages in spirit possession, and that does exorcisms and things of that nature. And that's not something that I've ever really experienced to the heightened degree here in Australia underneath this neo-pagan framework that I have worked with. I know that other people do have some pretty intense practices, but I have found for myself that when I really look at those other practitioners, for instance, the hedge witches, the shamanistic, traditional witchcraft types of fringe practitioners, let's call them that I've got more in common with those people. Not because that's necessarily my style, but they're just on a level that I can really like appreciate. Their practices may not necessarily be the same, but they're just as that raw and primal and kind of sinewy and like really like and that's kind of what I've been missing. I've been missing that thing. I've been missing being able to walk into a witchcraft shop or a witch market and find those things that you would never ever 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 find here in Australia, in a Western perspective, in a witchy new age. So you just would never find some of these things. You just never would. You wouldn't be able to walk into a place where they rear animals specifically for sacrifice. You wouldn't find that here. Not that I am into animal sacrifice. That's not something that I include in my practice. But to find pieces and that are, it's hard to put my finger on it, but it's just, you just don't find those places here. You do in Mexico, you do in South America, you do in Africa, you do in other parts of the world, you do, but not here, not where I am at least, not here in Australia that I've ever seen, put it that way. And I'm not speaking of America, I can only really speak of Australia and Brazil. That's where I'm really like coming at this from. And it's just incredible how it's incredible now, everything that looking at it from a really different perspective, looking at this entire process of this entire evolution and this discontent that I felt towards the end of that, just before I peeled that framework off, that neo-pagan framework off, and I felt very, very liberated, very free. But I also have to, like, really from the bottom of my heart thank the neo-pagan community, and also thank the neo-pagan writers and the musicians and just the people that contribute to that vast umbrella for all that they did for me, and just the tremendous amount of peace and acceptance that I was gifted when I first came here. And they were really the only, they were my peeps. They were my people. So I don't look down at neo-paganism at all. I just think that, it's incredible. It's a wonderland what you can find within the neo-pagan umbrella, and there is definitely something there for everyone. But for me, having raised in a very, very different environment and getting accustomed to that different environment before I got to understand what neo-paganism was, it never ever 100% fit. It never did. But that doesn't make it a bad thing either. But I'm, now that it's all become very apparent to me, I'm just honoring it, and I'm going through the process for myself, and and it is like coming home. It's like I'm being called home. I'm having these incredible conversations with my family. I'm remembering so much. I'm dreaming again, like I really dream now. I'm sleeping better than I've ever slept before. My practice with tarot is very spirit work now, and the way that I conduct ritual and the way that I use my tools now is very my own. It just reminds me of how they used to do it back home, and it's still got my own unique flavor to it. And I don't know, it's a really interesting and very satisfying time for me personally. And so I would love to be able to share more of what it is that I'm doing, and more of what is ancestral practice, and more of that cultural aspect, that folklore aspect, or that low magic aspect. I would love to be able to share a little bit more about that respectfully, and I might start with cooking. Who knows? I might start with making a traditional Brazilian feast. Who knows? But we will see. And so I just thought that I would jump on here onto YouTube, which has been a really great source of connection with others and other practitioners. And I really appreciate YouTube, and I really appreciate all the people that I have met through YouTube. And to celebrate it as well, I'm going to be doing a giveaway. I wanted to be able to announce my giveaway here, but I don't have everything that I need for my giveaway. I've got a few things that I've got that are locally made, that are beautiful, and I'm going to put together a really nice bundle, and I'm going to gift it to someone just to say thank you for, all the love that you guys have given me over the years. I've been on YouTube for a long time, and I've been up and down on YouTube and in and out on YouTube, and I just want to bring that sense of groundedness to my YouTube channel as well, and I want to be able to just share more honestly and openly the things that I practice and I enjoy practicing without sort of fear of criticism or misunderstanding. And there's quite a few reasons why I've never really shared a lot of what I do privately, because there is a lot of stigma attached to primitive magic and to certain elements of traditional folklore practices, or I don't know how to really put it. There's a little bit of stigma attached to it, and I also get weirdly criticized. Like, my grandmother used to wrap her head, and my mother wraps her head, my sister wraps her head. But when I wrap my head, and I feel amazing when I wrap my head. I just feel like I'm connected to home, and it's a thing that, that they do over there. The Brazilians love to wrap their heads, and I wrap my head for religious reasons, and I wrap my head for fashion reasons, and it's not, it's something that I do that's very much a part of my heritage, and yet I get criticized because I don't appear to be from the right culture to do that. And I'm like, that's so weird. That's so weird. And over the years, I've kind of been inadvertently fearful of that kind of critique, and so I've held a lot back. But I'm actually quite done holding all that back. I'm quite present. I'm quite grounded. I'm quite confident. I'm proud, and I'm very, very interested in opening that door and sharing when I do. So if you're interested in that, then that's awesome, because we are going to be talking about witchcraft. We're going to be talking about tarot from a very different perspective, divination, magic, culture, deity, spirit. Oh God, it's so yummy. It's just so yummy. So there you go, beautiful souls. A little heart-to-heart from me to you, explaining what's sort of been going on for me, and it's a long video, so if you've stuck with me, then you're awesome, and I appreciate you. So much love, guys. Many blessings. Look after yourselves, and if you have any questions or any requests for things that you may want me to share, then please leave them below, and I will try my absolute best to oblige. And I'm going to be putting together that lovely little package for giveaway, and hopefully that will be up soon. Okay, so from the bottom of my heart, I'm wishing you so much love, luck, peace and joy, and no matter where you are and whatever you are doing, I sincerely hope that you are surrounded by magic. Much love, many blessings. Bye.